If the thought of running a 100-person company fills you with fear and you're like, I don't know how you'd ever do that, well, listen up because I'm going to explain exactly how to do it. What's up, people? My name's Tim. I'm head ninja at Exposure Ninja. We are a 100-person remote company, which is why I'm qualified to make this video. I'm going to take you through the different stages of growth that we've been through, and I hope it's useful, and I hope you can identify where your business is at, and I hope you can learn from some of the stupid mistakes that we've made. The first thing to say is that when I talk to people that have hired like their first few people, or even just their first hire, they can't imagine getting to a stage where they have 100 people. It just feels completely overwhelming to them. And what they're doing is they're imagining doing everything that they're doing now, but times 100, right? If they're looking after 5 people, they're imagining their management load multiplying by 20x, right? Because if they have 5 people now and now they're going to be managing 100, that sounds horrendous. But here's the thing, that's not how it works, because the larger the company gets, the more managers you have. Actually, you should never really be managing any more than 7 people. And once you get to the stage where you've got like a really solid management team and perhaps even a general manager like Exposure Ninja has, I don't really manage directly anyone anymore. And the other thing to remember is that as the company's infrastructure goes, you have more people to handle admin and accounts and HR stuff, so you have to do less of that. So actually what happens as the company grows is your job role goes from trying to do absolutely everything and doing a little bit of everything to being very focused on doing one particular thing, like for example overseeing the marketing or overseeing the direction and the vision of the company. Honestly, my feeling is that if you can cope at 15 people, you can cope at 100, because I think actually the workload is probably most when you're at about 15 people, because you might not yet have department managers taking care of each department. So you're trying to do all of that whilst you're trying to kind of manage the growth of the company. Okay, so what are the different stages that we've been through? I've got my phone here with some notes, so I'm not being rude. And the first stage is when we were all freelance. So I was working freelance and building websites, and I hired a bunch of freelance helpers to kind of help me build them. I was essentially trying to scale myself. So I was learning how to do something, and then I was putting a freelancer in and training them how to do it and kind of scaling that way. So everything came from me. First person I hired that did something I couldn't was a designer. Because I'm not a designer, I had to hire a designer once we needed to do a higher level of design than I could bash out on Photoshop. The next person we hired was someone to handle accounts because I hated it. And it really sucked my energy away. So there are people out there that love doing accounts and are much better at it than I am. So that's what the next person that we hired. And that's usually a good person to hire if you're just starting to build a team. Now we were building websites. So another early hire that we made was copywriters. People that could write the content on the website. Now this is something that I can and could do, but it wasn't necessarily my best strength, and it was stopping me from doing other things that only I could do. So I had to get someone in to start doing that stuff. That meant that most of my time was spent on sales and marketing, just because those are the areas that I kind of naturally gravitate most towards. And I think they're good areas to have ownership of when you're just starting out, because the sales piece is much easier to sell when you understand the product that you're selling in real depth. So as a business owner, you're probably well suited to taking on the sales and marketing side early on and then having people work on the delivery for you. The next stage of Exposure Ninja's growth is when we actually moved from being a whole bunch of ragtag freelancers and actually started to form a bit of a company with structure. So I brought on someone that could do sales, but also had a bit more kind of strategic input as well. So they're essentially another Tim. They did a lot of the same sort of things that I did, but it just meant that that would free my time up so I could do sales and they could do sales. I could do marketing. They could do a bit of product management as well. Now, when you're forming the early stages of a company, a lot of your people are going to be multitasking. And this is when you're going to start hiring people that are maybe slightly more expensive and a bit more similar to you, rather than people that just do a specific task over and over and over again. So these people are going to be having more strategic input, and they're going to naturally start to become the management team as the company grows bigger. Now, the mistake I made at this stage is as that team started to become a management team and started to take care of different departments, I, rather than delegated, just just completely abdicated. I said, right, great, they've got that under control, and I left it to them before they were ready, and I didn't spend enough time checking what was happening in those roles. So what happened in Exposure Ninja in the early days, so I'm thinking in year 2, so 1.5 to year 2, where we were at maybe 15 people, we had a lot of people that weren't necessarily doing the best job. We'd hired them and put them in an office, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I just assumed that everything was going well with them and that they had enough work to justify being there. And it turns out that they didn't. This was a mistake that I made because I had taken my eye off the ball, just assumed everything was fine and gone and worked on other things. And I've noticed that this has been a tendency of mine throughout my career. I'll just assume that something is fine and I'll go and work on something else and then go back to it and be like, oh, it's not fine. So a really important lesson I learned in that stage is delegate, don't abdicate. Now at this point, I was spending most of my time still doing sales and marketing, but also a lot of client communication. I was still really the main focal point for the clients that we were working with. And that became really, really draining because we had quite a lot of clients and there was a lot of communication that needed to be done. Everything was going through me, and it became very apparent that I was kind of the blockage in the system, if you like. Now, as I said, during this time, we started putting people in a physical office. We've always been a remote company, but in 2014, we decided it would be a really good idea to open an office because we needed to go legit. So we got this office space in Nottingham. I moved up to Nottingham from Bristol, having never seen the office, and arrived there, and great, now we've got an office. And of course, now we had this big office space, we needed to fill it with people. So we had all these desks with chairs that we needed to fill, so we started filling it with these people. Some of them warranted their places, some of them honestly didn't. So it got to a really tough stage towards the end of 2014, the worst period in my life without any shadow of a doubt. The business was starting to go down for the first time. And 1 month I actually had to put in some of my own money, which is the first time I've ever put in money into Exposure Ninja. We've been profitable since day one, but this 1 month, October 2014, I had to put money in because we just hadn't been making enough money to pay for all the overheads. So we made a really tough decision to restructure the company, and basically that meant I had to let a load of people go on the same day. A lot of these people were people that are really close to me. They'd been through the kind of journey of Exposure Ninja up till then. It was horrendous. I would never wish it upon anyone, but the likelihood is it's going to happen to you at some point in your life if you're growing a company. And I learned you've got to look out for the company first and foremost. As harsh as that sounds when you're looking at the needs of an individual or the needs of the company has to come first, because the company is what's going to feed all of the individuals. And without the company, there really is no future for the individuals. So I made the decision to let those people go, and it was horrific, but we just had to do it. And once it was done, we were able to then grow again. I also realized in this stage to trust my instincts more. So we'd taken on the office based on the recommendation of somebody else. My instinct had told me that we needed to stay remote, but I just assumed that I don't have the answers because I'm pretty new to all of this. What I learned from this experience is that actually, if our DNA is that we're a remote company, that's completely okay. We don't have to go in an office just because this person told us that we had to be in an office. So that kind of whole experience and the pain that it caused taught me that actually, if we go against our DNA and we go against the way that we've kind of been designed up till now, actually that can be quite a painful experience. So I learned to trust my gut and my instincts a bit more. Around this time, I started taking on all the sales side of things myself again, and that made a big difference to the company. We also brought in a lot of automation as well. We signed up for Infusionsoft and got everything mapped out in Infusionsoft, which took a huge amount of the follow-up pressure to do manual follow-up with our clients away, and allowed us to scale our sales operation much faster. Made a very good hire during this growth period as well, a guy called Wayne, who's with the company today, and he was absolutely fantastic in kind of growing the sales team and allowing me to step back from sales so I could focus more on operations. We had some ridiculously talented people inside the company already. Some of the management team that we have today were already inside the company at this stage, so we gave them more and more and more responsibility. In particular, Charlie, our general manager today, started out as a content marketing ninja, just writing some articles while she and her partner were traveling. Both of them now work at Exposure Ninja. They're really strong ninjas. We wouldn't be the company that we are without Charlie and Luke. So the hires that we made during this period were some of the best hires that kind of really set the company up for success. Around this period, we also started rolling out more structure. So things like having a systemized KPI process where everyone in the company has KPI goals and they know what their roles are. Things like documentation around processes and tightening up our processes, more training, more onboarding stuff. So this is when we started to become a bit more of a serious and scalable company. And a lot of this was down to putting people that had the strengths that I don't have, particularly around organization and process, into positions of power and giving them responsibility to go and do these things. So at this point, we started to become a better company than just Tim multiplied. We actually started to have strengths in areas that I had personal weaknesses. And I think that's really important, that as the company grows, you give responsibility to people that are in different areas to you or have different levels of expertise or different experiences. That kind of diversity is super important. Without that, you really can't grow to be a stable company. My time during this stage was mostly spent on sales, marketing, and recruitment as well. We grew to about 50 people during this period, and it was just kind of steady incremental growth, nothing spectacular. The period that we had after this was explosive growth, and this really started taking off in 2018. Doubled between January and June. Everything kind of felt for the first time like things were actually working. Now that's absolutely crazy, because that was like 5.5 years into the business was the first time it really felt like, oh yeah, do you know what, this is, you know, we're really doing something here. But I think what happened is we put in a lot of work into processes and systems and people by this stage, that actually things were starting to become a bit more stable. That's not to say we didn't have good days and bad days, of course. Like when you're in a company, you'll have good days and bad days, whatever size you are. But it just felt like, you know, you don't get the kind of drama, explosions and bursting into flames things that you do when you're an earlier company, because now you have people and you have structure and you have processes and things are a bit more stable. During this stage, we hired a lot more people as well. So this took us up to probably 80 people, and we started giving department managers loads more responsibility. So inside Exposure Ninja, the departments are basically run like mini businesses. So they all have profit and loss statements. They have their own budgets. They have their own forecasts. They have a profit share, which is based on their department's profitability. So they're essentially running small companies inside Exposure Ninja, and that's made a big difference. But the important thing is that we only made that choice once we knew that the department managers were absolutely amazing and that the structure was there to allow them to do it. If we'd have done this too early, it could have been absolute carnage. During this period, my time was mostly spent running and recruiting sales team, overseeing the marketing, not necessarily doing the marketing, also doing training and onboarding people. Now the next phase is one that I've talked about in a previous vlog, which is basically my redundancy.
Technically redundant. What do I do now?
So in October 2019, I handed over the sales team, and that's the kind of the last of my direct responsibilities inside the company, really. Now, that's not to say that I don't have any work to do. Actually, my workload is as big as it's ever been. But mostly now my time is spent on overseeing our marketing and also designing product and the vision for the company. I see myself, and I know I've talked about this before, as a kind of lead meerkat, standing on top of the mound, looking out for the dangers and the opportunities and kind of navigating the business there. So that's really what I'm here to do. As the company has grown, my job has more and more become to do the stuff that nobody else is going to do. And that kind of leadership piece is something that nobody else in the company is necessarily going to do, because everybody else is doing the stuff, or they're managing the people doing the stuff. So they need to focus on that, and I need to focus on actually being really useful to Exposure Ninja as a leader, which is a big change, but it's something that I'm absolutely loving. So I hope that's been useful to see the different stages of growth. And if you're running a company, maybe you can see yourself on one of those stages, or maybe you're far above us and you can reach down and give me some advice. That'd be absolutely amazing. It's been so much fun. I look back on the years of growth with so much pride. There are so many times when I've thought, wow, are we really doing the right thing? Like maybe we should be doing something else completely. This really isn't working. But overall, the good days significantly outweigh the bad days, and it's those bad days that kind of give the good days context, I think. Love it. Absolutely love it. We've got a long way to go, and I don't even know what our next year is going to look like. We've got some massive, massive goals, and all I see is opportunity for growth, to the extent that it's actually quite overwhelming. And I know that my tendency is to try and start loads of things all the time. So I've got to kind of balance that tendency to start loads of things with giving the team enough time to make any changes in direction that we decide to do, and giving everyone the support to actually deliver what we're doing now, rather than always kind of moving over into the next shiny object that pops up. But I'm really excited for the future, loving every day, and yeah, loving having you on the journey with me.